And? To screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up. And
it's really such a good opening.
Welcome to This Week in Worcester Podcast. I am Tom Marino. I am the editor of This Week in Worcester. I am here with event promoting rock star, the president of Hollywood Film Group, the executive producer of Manage A Media, and 1,000 other titles. Also, my co-host and friend, Mr. John Edward Keogh. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. That's me.
Let's do something positive before we get to a bunch of stuff that I bet somebody's gonna yell. That somebody's being me.
Tom's gonna yell about stuff.
It appeared to be a tremendous success for the Dead of Winter film festival that took place last weekend. Am I correct in my assessment?
We were very pleased with the results of the festival. We had 50% more attendees than last year. 3 times as many films, and just a lot of wonderful, exciting things. Looks like the reviews are coming in from different places, and everybody seemed to have a really good time. As most people know, making an event like this is a massive effort from a ton of people, not just myself. I can't possibly take credit for that. Just so many people that just did so much work. So we are, it looks like it's going to be a multi-year program. So that's really exciting. And there's a lot more work to do. We really want to help continue to develop this, the local Worcester economy for film. So anyways, very grateful for everybody's support. And we had a good time. I still have popcorn. If anybody's watching and wants to help me get rid of the popcorn, that would be great. We can get rid of, and we have T-shirts for sale. So T-shirts, that's going on. So we're doing that, and then taking maybe a rest from it for a few weeks, and then we'll see what happens for next year. But it was really cool, and I had a really good time. I was tired, but I got to see our movies, and I felt great about that. So very good. Hopefully it's the beginning of something that's going to last for 20 years. So,
yeah, I didn't see all the films on Sunday, but I saw a good chunk, and I don't say this to suck up, because honestly, it'd be more fun if I told you it was crap. But I thought, the one I enjoyed the most was the one you were involved with Tommy Dwyer.
Soulless. Yeah, it looks like everybody likes it. That's really cool. I was standing next to you watching it, which is awesome, and I got to see the people like in the audience, a couple that this, which was cool, and that's really obviously Leanne was the lead editor, and I helped. I was part of that editing team, and so it was cool to see how it looked on the big screen. That was awesome. That was really, and the team worked so hard. Tommy promoting the thing every day, and the promotion for that doesn't end, because we're trying to do it to other festivals around the country. So it's really cool. And then a bunch of the films from Dead of Winter already got accepted into another film festival, Strange Maynard, in May. So there's a bunch of entries. So that shows the strength of the festival, that the films that were in there are starting to be accepted other places around the region. So we're trying to do that, man, build that quality film content. So that's really cool. And it was cool to watch it with you. So it was cool to be with my buddy watching the movie.
Yeah, well, thanks. and there was a lot of good stuff. Some just scary, some with a bit of tongue in cheek to it. And no, certainly no disrespect to anybody who submitted a film that was selected. Working hard with zero money to try and do a thing that looks like it's pro, and well, at least the ones you selected certainly succeeded. But I just, it's a horror festival. Like, where is the one where it's so disturbing when it's over that, like, the only thing you could hear a pin drop if it wasn't for the person getting sick in the corner? Like, I where is that?
So I mean, I think we just didn't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a shorts festival, so it's hard to do that build up. With movies that are generally like 15 minutes and under. And then you have to balance the festival, so there's like a balance between kind of funny and scary. So it's hard to
No,
it's hard to program.
and I'm not saying that every film should be like that. Like, there should be obviously a range of films, but it surprises me that in the 2 years that and I mean, I didn't see every film in both years, but it just surprised me. Like, where's that? I don't know. I can't think of a good scene where you're like, that's a lot.
Or maybe these first 2 years will inspire some local artists to make something really disturbing, and then you'll get something like that next year. And hopefully we'll have a feature film to show maybe next year or the year after. That's the goal, is to show some features. That would be really cool. Like a full movie. But of course, that takes a lot of work. I mean, believe me, making a short film, a lot of work. Making a full feature film,
I can't imagine.
way more.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And maybe I although it's not horror, maybe I've been the well has been poisoned. I began rewatching Dexter, which I haven't. I watched the last season they did a couple years ago when that came out, but I haven't seen any of that in forever. And first season about his backstory and how he became what he is. And there's these scenes, many of them just covered in blood. I think that was like, why, Wiz? And it wasn't even scary. That's more dramatic, right? But I'm just like, it was just that horror festival.
You want some slasher stuff? Yeah. So we really didn't have a slasher this year. I mean, in Shift, there was the one thing where the creature's hands and the blood got thrown on the wall.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of slashers this year. But maybe next year there'll be some slashers. I hear some rumors among the group that there'll be some more stabby movies next year.
Some more stabby movies.
So maybe that'll wet your whistle for next year. Maybe that'll get you to get going.
I usually don't use that word.
For the support. There's a ton of support locally in Worcester. The folks in Worcester turned out strong. So I'm glad. And then Mechanics Hall, again, what a beautiful place to throw a bunch of scary movies into.
It is. It's an interesting setup. You had a million vendors. And I like the way you did the seating better this year. It was kind of more compact, right? More theater feeling than spread out, and you buoyed that with vendors in the back. So, I thought it was an improvement. You got better at it naturally because it's not the first time you did it. And it
I think next year we already have some thoughts about how to make that even better. Maybe the food vendors need to come out into that front area too, because they were kind of tucked in the back. So we'll figure it out. We'll get it going.
I'm always partial to more food.
Yeah, we had a hard time with the food vendors this year. We only had two, in Breeze Sweet Treats, and then in Mr. Munchies, right? That came out, and then Leanne and Olivia McElroy from Ally Mac's the promotion market, Ally Mac Marketing, right? The two of them did the popcorn. And I just think that the way that it is, that room, it's hard to do. We were trying to avoid popcorn in the Great Hall, right? We were like trying to make that like a thing, but then at the end, it turns out that they cleaned it up afterwards anyway. So maybe what we'll do is we'll bring out popcorn. Maybe we'll do hot popcorn versus bagged popcorn. But again, we were trying to make different decisions and flying, and we had a couple of food vendors pull out at the last second. We had a pizza truck who showed up for the Saturday. But he didn't do a lot of sales, so he didn't come back on Sunday. So
yeah, if you're outside, I mean, that's not going to work, right?
Did they have horror-themed treats? Yeah, Bree did. Bree made some special cookies and stuff, and so did, and then Mr. Munchies did too. But we just didn't have enough food vendors. I think we needed more. And so what happens there is there was people who left from lunch, and so maybe we didn't have as thick of a crowd because the people were going out for food. You know what I mean? And plus, the parking is so terrible in Worcester. It's the worst ever. That I have to figure out maybe next year. I need to figure out like a deal with one of those lots where it's just the lot. But that, of course, then the event has to pay for that. And so then how do you balance that? How do you keep ticket prices low and also offer other things that make it more convenient for the person to come? It's a real hard. It's a lot to manage and to operate. So those are things I want to look into next year. Parking like a one lot that's just for the event. You know what I mean? But you can't have it too far away because then you have to shuttle people, right? So figuring all that out. There's one right right down the street. Maybe that's a good pick. Well, we'll see. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. We had some things to tackle today.
Yeah, let's go.
We obviously didn't do a show last week because we were partaking in the horror. I am getting feedback from your end. I'm hearing myself twice.
Oh, no.
Well,
How do I
want to hear
that?
myself once. I don't know.
Hold on. Let me see about that.
Put an earpiece in like a professional?
Nope. How about that?
Hello. Yeah, we're good. So we're going to start with the race for mayor for the city of Worcester, which I don't know. People are seemingly confused if Joe Petty, the current mayor, is running again. I mean, he told Manny J Media that. I've heard him say it elsewhere.
He's announced it on Manny J Media 4 times. Manny asked him directly, "Are you running for mayor?" And he said yes.
And he was I don't want to mischaracterize. I mean, it wasn't dismissive, but it was like almost like he was surprised. Yes, like
yeah.
So I don't know what the thing is there. He said it a bunch of times. As far as I know, and as far as everything I've heard,
reporters are clearly not watching Manny J Media, so that's on them. Learn how to watch Manny J Media. Telegram people.
And then Christian King, city councilor at large, also announced that he would run for mayor for the second consecutive election. And the next morning, or the next day, the mayor released a statement going on offense immediately. You can see the whole statement. It's around. You can find it on Twitter. I'm looking at it at friend of the show, Hank Stoltz, Talk of the Commonwealth Twitter account. But there's 2 bullet points in it. A city council who participated in an illegal, non-public council subcommittee meeting, casting votes on and now facing an open meeting law violation. Okay. And a city councilor who has contributed to weekly chaos and gridlock, making dysfunction the hallmark of this council term, now claims that divisive politics are to blame for the city's stagnation. So the first thing is weird. What happened is councilors King, Hajii, and Nguyen, as part of they constitute the education committee, and they released a statement on, I don't even remember what it was, to be frank, and they addressed it as on behalf of the committee, right? Because the 3 of them run the committee. Well, you can't do that because if you're following procedure, for the committee to release such a statement, they'd have to vote to do so, and there was no meeting held where they did that. So here we are, right? I think the reality of it is that they all agreed to put out a letter as together. They were in the same place on the issue, and they, lack of poor judgment for sure, but they put that letter out as on behalf of the committee when they should not have done that. But I don't know that they met and had votes and did all this stuff that is claimed. And then on the second, so the open, there's complaints about that were submitted, for open meeting law violation, and that division of the state government. We'll deal with that. They'll probably have to take a training. That's usually what happens. And then contribute to this whole statement about the chaos and gridlock is, look, I mean, you shouldn't expect factual declarations from campaign material, but it's just strategically. I don't know how this is. I mean, do you think this plays strategically? Like, you think this is going to resonate with people who might be on the fence or not know who they're voting for? I don't know.
I mean, just being around Worcester for a long time, this looks like it was clearly written by Paul. That's like, I mean, I've read, I don't know how many articles by Paul over the past 35 years, and they almost all read the same. So, it looks like Paul Giorgio is back on the squad for the mayor. So that's what it looks like. It's a straight attack. I would say that the open meetings law thing, based on the people who filed the complaint, so Steve Quist, I mean, these are just classic, Mayor Petty sycophants that have kind of always been on his side. I would ask Mr. Quist, how come you don't file complaints about the meetings that are inside the mayor's office almost every week with 6, 7, 8, 9 counselors having conversations in space? That's very interesting. And then if you remember, a couple times there's been some motions to adjourn, and then the councilors have filed into the mayor's office and they've come back out with a clear decision. So what were they doing in that office? I don't ever see Steve filing complaints there. And then, of course, there's just a ton of things we could go into with the EDCC. So it's just interesting. It looks coordinated. It looks staged. It looks like the mayor anticipated Councilor King's announcement, because the open meetings law complaints were filed on were made it onto the agenda for this Tuesday, and then Councilor King's announcement comes out, and then the mayor's press release came out like instantaneous. So I mean, to me, it looks like this was a planned attack. I think that there could have been, some better decision making there by the committee. I think that, when I was on the cable commission, they were on our butts about email, right? Like they were on us about when I was the chairman, if I sent out a group email to all the members of the committee and they responded to me, then Judy Warren, who's the head of the cable department for the city, would be like, "Oh, that's a violation," and would immediately jump on our backs for any email communications, even though we would then attach it to the minutes, and then that would eliminate the thing. So there needs to be some kind of functionality based on a modern age. But maybe they did make a mistake, and so I guess. But what is the open meeting violation going to do, Tom? If you look in the history of Massachusetts over the past 5 years, the open meetings law violation has resulted in 4 total actual violations and 0 actual things. So for the mayor to call it illegal and make it this massive cudgel, look at what they did, I don't know, kind of ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah, it's it doesn't appear they had a meeting and took votes and did anything, intentionally secretive besides collaborate on a letter that really didn't have anything to do with the committee. So I don't know why they. But you know what? I don't know if there's been. There was just recently. I wrote about it. It was last year, I believe, or beginning of this year. The board of the Department of Secondary and Elementary and Secondary Education was found to have violated open meeting law by the way they had set up some speakers to speak, public speakers to speak.
And what happened?
And they had to take training. No, they had to take training. That's it.
Big deal.
Yeah. I mean, they're not, if it's a habitual problem, I'm sure that they'll come down on you. But, going through a training course will probably make you stop doing the thing. So, yeah, it was interesting, selections of things to attack on.
The other thing about the chaos of the council.
Yeah, there's a lot of people to blame for that.
I mean, that's his fault. I got to be honest with you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, you're the one who refused. You took the majority to refuse the original, the Gaza petition being on the agenda illegally, and then you were forced into it, and that kind of set off the fireworks really late. Quarter, 2/3 of the way through last year. But realistically, I mean, this council has done nothing of substance. And the chairman, generally, the person who said on at least 10 different public occasions, when you have 6 votes, you can govern the city, who has a majority, a 6-vote majority. Have they done anything of substance in this session? So let's take away the meetings that there's been chaos and there's been a lot of public comment and there's been long meetings. What have they done? What have they done during this period of time? And the answer is nothing. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that the majority has been embarrassed repeatedly by their own policy positions, like with the developers being caught out in various things, and the police department being caught out in various things, and the stuff with WPI and Holy Cross and yada 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 yada. Those are all substantial policy positions where they've been exposed as being corrupt. And so the stuff where people are protesting different things or wanting to have public comment, I don't know that is indicative of a chaotic council. It just means that local people want to talk. That doesn't mean it. That I don't blame that on any particular person, but I would say just the absolute abject failure of the council to do anything substantive would go to the leader of the majority, right? I mean, that's how I look at legislative bodies.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, though, this isn't your typical legislative body. I mean, this legislative body was designed to do nothing and have no power. So that they don't accomplish a whole great deal isn't surprising because they don't have the power to do a whole great deal.
Yeah, that's true. But they've also, in this case, even in this term, they've given away more of their power. This majority had the opportunity, for example, to hire their own attorney to be able to have their own legal opinions, and they declined to do so, despite the city manager actively going out of his way to make sure that there was budget money appropriated for it and set aside for it. That this majority voted against that, and so I mean, even when they do have the opportunity to use the power that they have chosen to lay it down. So this is like high level. Not doing anything with the city council, even though the city council generally has nothing to do and no power to exhibit. This particular version of the council, and I lay it at the feet of the majority. It's the 6-vote block, has gone out of its way to fail epically during the session. This past week with the senior citizen thing, just an abject failure, not giving credit to our own senior citizens just because Rob Bellotta put the petition in. It's just utter, complete and utter foolishness, because most of their voting blocks are senior citizens. So, I mean, they obviously have to know that I'm going to go to every single meeting at the senior center and remind all the senior citizens that they all voted against giving them a tax credit.
The lawyer thing I've ranted about many times, but I just want to illustrate the reality once again. We're not a town. The city of Worcester is a city, and its government is organized as a city government in Massachusetts. City governments in Massachusetts have 2 branches of government, unlike towns. Towns have 1. There's the kind of getting into basic civics here. Cities have 2 branches of government. The council is the legislative branch. It is not tasked with doing much, hiring and firing the manager, passing in, or approving an annual budget that it can't meaningfully amend. And it is the sole source of the creation of ordinance, local laws, in city government. And they turn, and when they need an ordinance written or a draft for an ordinance for them to debate, they then turn back to the administrative branch, the city manager, and the solicitor, and ask the solicitor to write the ordinance for them. They won't even do their own job. They let somebody out. They outsource it to somebody else's lawyer who does not represent them. And they play this game about, they use the solicitor to ask the solicitor, and this is not the solicitor's fault by any stretch of the imagination, but they play this game where they ask the solicitor for legal opinion. And it's always, they have to ask them a question and get a rendered opinion like a judge would give back. And it would actually be unethical of the solicitor to provide them information that it would contradict the city manager's position on anything, because the solicitor essentially represents the the branch of government that the city manager that leads. So it's essentially his representation writing, like, do you see how there's no two branches going on here? How there's no duality of even a duality of perspective. There's one perspective, and it comes from the administration, and they just go along.
Well, so then when the mayor is referring to in his statement leadership, right? And that he has a different position on leadership than Councillor King, what the mayor is really referring to is secret closed door backroom deals that the mayor has been able to orchestrate that are not actually on the floor, because the actual floor show that we see week to week doesn't actually do anything because of what you just said, right? They have no power. They've given it all away, and they can't actually do anything. But what the mayor does do is he regularly orchestrates deals behind closed doors with all of his developer buddies and the secret robe-wearing, candle-carrying EDCC, Worcester. They make all the deals and they get everything done secretly, and then it's ordained and it's already on the floor. And so by the time we even understand what's happening, like, for example, we'll talk about the chickens a little bit later, but there's already a deal in place for them to make a new ordinance for the chickens that the mayor has arranged. And you can actually watch what they're doing happen live by what they say. So they start to position themselves. They talk about which committee to send it to, and then you start to hear the ordinance, how it already has been structured and what's already been agreed upon. But it's not actual true public debate. And so the mayor's referring to that. And what I think Councillor King is referring to is that Councillor King won't do that, or at least hopefully he won't do that, that he'll bring some of those secret discussions onto the floor. And I think he's had those frank discussions with Mayor Petty. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, Councillor King also does things that I disagree with as well, but I would appreciate it if anybody who would become a leader of this city would take those secret discussions and bring them out and have the public actually have the ability to have say.
Yeah, I mean, look, people should talk to each other. Like, when you're in government, right? People should talk to each other, and there is, one-on-one relationships and all that stuff that happens not in the public eye is important. But in general, my position would be, you had a conversation with somebody behind closed doors. That's your business. That's not the business of the city.
Well, Sarah, when we talk about the chickens in a little bit, I'll tell you exactly how you can recognize this previously ordained discussion. I'll give you a great example.
Moving on to, last thing on that is, the mayor released his statement on February 27th. So at the time, like, we're doing this in February. Like, we can't do this until November. I cannot.
This is gonna be a long, nasty election season this year, my friend, because there's the elephant, or should I say, the school committee vote leader in the room that no one wants to talk about, that might enter the mayoral race. And so if that happens, we're going to have one of the worst mayoral races of all time. So I'm hoping for that. I'm very hopeful, because you know what happens if Maureen announces, then John announces for mayor.
Look, I can only go on, I'll just say what I heard, which I heard that's not the case.
Well, we'll see. Because I'm hearing a lot of stuff. Maybe there's some closed room doors being made there too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that could have been the thinking at the time, and the thinking's changed. I don't know. I'm just saying that's the last I heard was that individual was planning on another school board run. But we'll see.
All right, we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Another thing happened in the last meeting. Maybe it was 2 meetings ago now, because we weren't able to broadcast last week.
That was completely your fault too. You should have broadcast from Dead of Winter. That would have been cool. This weekend was the podcast live.
I mean, I guess I could have. I believe it was 2 weeks ago, 2 meetings ago, council meetings ago, Councilor King brought up, asked for reconsideration on a financial transfer. So these are things that the council has to approve by law, but they're usually a list of them, and it's like moving money between accounts, basically. And one of them was a $1.2 billion transfer from the city manager's contingency fund to its account for civil litigation settlements. 1.2 million. That means something's coming, by the way. But that said,
something is coming, Tom. That's for sure.
And it's more than 1.2 million. I can guarantee you that. But so they usually vote on these in a block, and it's like financial items, A through Q or whatever it is. It's usually a bunch of them. And the process happens very quickly because there's never any really discussion on them. And now Councilor King should have seen it before, it was pushed through, and should have said that he was going to speak to that item. He didn't, right? So the following week he comes back and he asked for reconsideration on this item. He told me he had some questions about it that he wanted to ask the administration. And 6-5, reconsideration was denied. So he wasn't allowed to ask those questions before the public about why would about $1.2 million being transferred into account used to settle civil litigation.
So the majority.
I got to tell you, folks. Yeah, I mean, it's the 6 you'd imagine. Yep, it's a 6 you'd imagine.
The majority voted against transparency, is what you're telling me. So they vote against seniors.
First of all, some of it's personal.
Right.
I'm sure.
Sure. Yep. Which is bad, but continue.
Yeah. Which is, you should all grow up. And then, but I think more importantly is the police department wouldn't want, the people in the police department wouldn't want this being discussed like this. Union people wouldn't want this discussed. They don't like being, their laundry being aired in public. And therefore the majority voted how they voted because we're in an election year.
And that's again. See, the thing is, that's terrible. But a different election calculus should be in. I would think that if you're going to criticize in some of the dueling press releases that have already started, right, the difficulty of the city council to get things done, the gridlock, and all those things, you would think that they would start to think about a different political calculus, that different votes that you take that normally would just be dismissed, right? So this vote would have been dismissed in an earlier version of this council as just not important, right? That there's going to be an interested group of people like us saying, hey, what's going on with this? Because it does look weird, right? That there's going to be no transparency on whatever that money is being used for. And it came only a few weeks after there was an executive session with the city manager to discuss a potential litigation result. So what is that related to that one? Is it a different one that's coming down the pike? Those are a lot of things that are going on. And so I think that, maybe Councilor King should have noticed it the week before, but at the same time, why would the majority vote against a discussion about a transfer of that size? It's $1 million. It's not like a little bit of money. It's a significant amount of money. So what's it going to? Earlier this year, there was 2 settlements that were like $300,000 and like $250,000. So this is twice that. So where's this money going to? Who is it another loss for the city? And why can't we talk about it? And why do we have to find out about these things later? Because we're going to find out, by the way, because there's going to be a notice in the TNG, or if someone's going to give Brad Petroshan the note, right? We know that's going to happen, and he's going to talk about it. And so then we're going to be like, oh, the city just paid out yet another police-related lawsuit or yet another city-related malfeasance situation, and we didn't get to discuss it as constituents because our city council, our majority of 6, voted against us yet again. A continual practice of voting against the people of Worcester just has been exhibited all year by this majority and this entire session, going back for a long, long time now.
Yep. So that's so they definitely don't want to talk about police stuff, that's for sure. And I think it's just another sign that the city council, as currently constituted, with the majority that it has that often vote together, the city council is not going to do anything on the police. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. And the reality is that the push for reform, like the reforms will of course be implemented by the chief of police. Congratulations to Chief Officer being now officially in the role, no more interim, and the city manager, obviously. But the city manager and the chief can't be the foundation of the push for those reforms because they are within the chain of command. And they have a chain of command that they need to keep together and unified and disciplined. And I would just use, not that this would happen here, but I would just use one example: the New York City Police. Shortly after the Eric Gardner's murder, the mayor then made some comments about it, and he went to an event and they all turned his back on him, and then they didn't write tickets, and I think it was in Times Square. So there was some area of the city they just refused to write tickets for like a week, and in New York City that is a significant amount of revenue.
Big money.
So this is just one example of something that I don't know if it would, but could happen, right? This is what happens when the chain of command starts to come apart, right? So they need to be seen as, back in quote their guys, the push for change needs to come from council, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Not based on, this report, obviously we're going to, go down to the city council on Tuesday and look at it. But all I'm seeing here is just realistically a restating of everything that the DOJ report already asked for. And in nowhere in this document do you see like a call for an investigation of the things that happened in the past, which is the whole point, right? So, it's great that there's going to be a new this and a new that and a new this, and awesome. Oh, great. And I do appreciate that, Chief Saucier, I do believe in him, that he's a guy that's going to try to do the reform aspect things, but I want him and other police supporters to understand this. When you release documents and statements that consistently say things like, we're going to look at this, but you don't mention specific situations, right? Then the victims in those specific situations, do you know what they hear? They hear, you're not important. They hear, we're not going to look into your case. And they hear, the people that did it to you are free to do it. And that's really the big problem. One of the things is the BOPS thing, which of course you're going to dig into hard, which you're really good at with this BOPS thing. But one of the things that you can see here is that the BOPS that already exists has not been investigating officers for use of force now for 30 years, right? And so we're not going to go back in time and investigate Tom Duffy for beating people openly on Main Street. But we should, because he committed a crime that was witnessed and documented by multiple of his officers who will never testify against him. But that's a crime. Understand this. Now, if Tom were to beat me up in the middle of downtown, right? And just so you know, Tom can throw those hands, boys and girls, just out there in internet land. Tommy can go down, right? So if he were to take me out in the middle of Main Street, guess what would happen to Tom? He'd get arrested. Right? And he wouldn't be able to get away with it. If he yanked me out of a car, let's just make an imaginary scenario where Tom pulled me over in my car and yanked me out of my front seat with my car still running and threw me onto the ground, and multiple of Tom's buddies, non-officers, just buddies, beat me senseless on the middle of the street, and then they let me go. What do you think would happen to Tom? He would get arrested, right? And so the current version of BOPS did not investigate that, even though multiple citizens filed complaints. And multiple citizens were then threatened by the same group of officers to drop their complaints. And then those complaints were slowly but surely just destroyed out of the record. So then when, for example, Anthony Petrone can get up on stage at the DOJ, city council day, where the police came out in force and say, "There's no evidence."
It wasn't a riot.
Right, wasn't a riot. Well, no riot, right. But there's no evidence. He can say that because the evidence that I just indicated was destroyed by those officers threatening citizens to be quiet. And those citizens, of course, when officers in uniform wearing badges come into their businesses and their places of where they're working or where they're living, or just confronting them in grocery stores, according to one particular situation, where Mr. Duffy had his wife tell somebody to keep her mouth shut, right? These are the kind of stories that we're talking about here in the city of Worcester. I'm just not afraid to say it because I just don't care. But you notice that they haven't sued me yet over the past 6 months, Tom. Why? Because then I would get access to discovery. And nobody wants John to have access to discovery, right? So these stories just continue. And we actually have a group of people, citizens in Worcester, living in fear because of a group of officers. So this report, I'm all for everything that it says, but I don't believe it's going to be done because the people that are in place right now, that are in charge right now, that are tasked in this report to do this investigation, haven't investigated their fellow officers for the crimes that they've been committing over the past couple of years. And no, neither Tom nor I, and This Week in Worcester, or any of the companies that are involved with us are saying every officer is bad. No one's saying that. What we are saying, though, is that there are several officers who've committed crimes, and they have not been investigated for those crimes, and the evidence has been destroyed intentionally. That is something that has to be addressed openly with specific incidents and specific names named. Otherwise, the trust will never be restored between the police and the public. It'll never be restored.
No, it won't be. There's too much. There's too much. And I don't know. It sounds like a Sopranos episode, doesn't it? Witness intimidation. And I mean, and look, this all falls to leadership over the last 20 years of that department, which were both an absolute walking disaster, and encouraged essentially the chain of command to just go haywire. So there is, as you mentioned, leading into our next item here, a report from the city manager and the chief on updates on progress on DOJ recommendations. Now, the caveats here are the initial report has recommendation in it. They're fairly boilerplate. I mean, I'm sure they're not given the same thing to every investigations, but they're somewhat boilerplate because there's a process that comes after the investigation where the feds and the city negotiate to an agreed settlement, hopefully, of what the actual reforms are going to be, right? So there are some recommendations in the report, but I mean that's not the juice here. But I just want to, and some of this is good, and a lot of it is policy updates, and that's fine, and that's good. I'm for it. But when enforcing those policies are going to go to an internal investigations team, who's should be called the Bureau of Professional Acquittals, and was criticized in the DOJ report for my paraphrase, not what they said, my paraphrase, not being interested in finding bad cops, but being interested in adjudicating claims, getting claims off their desk. And so, and then, I read through this and I mean, okay, fine. Like this, it pats himself on his back for some stuff and says that, it was already done some stuff and some of the recommendations had already been done even before the report. Again, I think it's kind of boilerplate what they put as recommendations in the report. But then, you scroll far enough and you get to like them referencing BOPS, the Bureau of Professional Standards, which does the internal investigations unit. And I understand that we don't do like things that are different here. Like we're not going to be this government is never going to be the first to do anything. Right. But I'm not sure where this like police investigation, scratch that. I'm not sure where it became okay for anybody to investigate themselves, for a division to investigate the wrongdoing of their coworkers, especially in the case of law enforcement where, that could involve the violation of civil rights, human rights, whatever. But I'm not sure, like, it's because we know why they want to keep this, because they want to control it, right?
Of course.
And that's fine. They can want that all they want. But the fact is that the people that work in that unit could be used to fill any of the numerous positions, 60 something, I believe that they're at, that are vacant and actually do work that is productive, because what they're doing now is not.
No, just look at the things that I really try to focus on. I know people start to think about like these massive conspiracies, and they listen to us sometimes, and they think that we're just like overtly against and all these other things. But just look at what the police department admitted to. Not. I'm just talking about what they admitted to. So they admitted to several of these investigations where Bob's determined there was no need to investigate. There was no report filed. There was no interviews conducted. Now, the chief, the current sitting chief, the new chief, right, and the interim chief at the time admitted that was against policy. In his public statements, that was against policy. The standard BOPS training manual that they have in the city of Worcester called for at least a report to be filed and at least a single interview to be conducted. And in these cases, case after case after case, and remember, the DOJ only polled and selected random cases. The BOPS was found to have not conducted interviews. BOPS was found not to have filed a report. So if you just look at that, right, whether you're a regular person or you're running for city council, right, okay, when you think about what that means, it means the police department admitted to the DOJ, because that information was given by current Chief Saucier to the DOJ. That's his own statement. Admits that the BOPS did not do their own policy. At least that's the bare minimum. So what Tom and I are saying is, at least at the bare minimum, the Bureau of Professional Standards should do their own policies that they wrote and that they train themselves on. Right? Look, their own policies. They're not even doing that. And so to say that we're like a deep conspiracy theorist or that we're against the police when we're just asking them to hold themselves to their own written standards is insane. It's literally insane.
I'm pro good cop.
Me too.
And it is not you or I that is group thinking the police into one organ. It's them that do that.
It's crazy. It makes no sense, Tom, because the same officers who get upset at us also on the side say to me regularly, right? Hey, I really wish I wasn't associated with so-and-so. Oh, okay.
Me too, brother.
So
me too.
Then hold your leadership to the standard of just doing their basic investigation. If at least there was a piece of paper that just said, hey, we looked into this and we found there's nothing. That's not even what we get. We just get a statement made to a DOJ lawyer where we were like, yeah, Lieutenant so-and-so said there was nothing to it, so we just didn't look into it. That's it. They didn't even write it down. It's mind-boggling that there was not that. You would think, okay, like I look at it this way: if I'm a sergeant, I'm Sergeant John, and Tom is Officer Marino, and somebody comes to me and says, Tom touched me, in a weird way. Okay, Tom's my friend. Minimum, I should say to Tom, hey, buddy, you can't work for a couple days. We got to look into this. And because I'm your friend, I got to give it to so-and-so, and they're going to do it. All right. Like we're just going to do that. Okay. I'm not saying you did it. I'm not saying you didn't do it. I'm just saying this is what we have to do. Okay. Is that all right, Tom? And Tom would say, reasonably so, yeah, that makes sense. Right? But that's not what's happening here, folks. When that exact situation came to fruition, the person who would play Officer John said, nah, that's Tom. He's my buddy. He would never do that. Investigate the witness. Do a background check of the witness. That's in this report, by the way, that the city manager said that no more will complainants be background checked. Why were they background checking someone who filed a complaint against the police?
Because they were not investigating the complaint. They were investigating with the intent to make the complaint go away. I disagree. You said that what we're saying, and you said what we're saying is we just want them to follow their own rules and policy. No. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, and I don't expect the chief to take this position. I don't expect the city manager to take this position, but because again, I am conscious of they are, city managers are head of the chain of command, and the chief is next in line. They have 500 plus employees just that are on the street, that they need to keep, some sort of morale in a good place and keep the chain of command operating so that they're doing what their primary focus of catching people that do bad things. But what I am saying is that anyone who's talking about a future of this police department that includes it doing its own internal investigations isn't serious and is not credible.
It should be outside agencies. It should be so. I mean, obviously at the national level, we have something going on with the Office of the Special Counsel. That's whose job is to do two things: investigate, take care of federal whistleblowers and investigate violations of the Hatch Act, right? And so of course, President Trump wants to fire this person. A federal judge holds that up, and then yesterday said or on Friday said you can't do that. That's you're not allowed to do that. Now it's getting escalated to the Supreme Court. Why is that person important? Why? Because the people who are going to be charged with violations of the Hatch Act, and the Hatch Act being Congress doing bad stuff, political things with money in Congress, right? They have an inherent desire not to be charged with those violations. So if they investigate themselves, they're going to often find themselves not to be the one, right? And so that's what we're saying here is the same thing as we're not saying that the officers are all bad. What we are saying is that you shouldn't even have that on your plate, right? It should be somebody else's job. And then, of course, the question is, that is the way our opponents, I guess, in this particular conversation respond to that, Tom, is they'll say, well, who investigates the investigator and who investigates the investigator and yada, 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 yada. Well, in that case, police. That would be the police's job to investigate that other person or this other, agency, or maybe the feds, or maybe the state police, or maybe somebody else. But it wouldn't be the Worcester police investigating themselves. Because they clearly haven't been able to do that. We have documents that they've admitted they can't do that. And in this document by the city manager admits we really need to make some improvements. His own quote. So if they needed to make improvements, that means they haven't been doing their job up until now. Yes? Does that make me a cop hater? By just reading the statement that he gave? That makes me a cop hater, right? I mean, that's what they say, Tom. They say that we hate the police.
I mean, if you're just okay with this situation as it has been for 20 years or more, people keep telling me more. I've really only kind of done my look at the last two chiefs. That's kind of the way I framed my review of what I'm trying, what's going on here. If there was any will to deal with it, look, they're just trying to keep it the same because it works well for them. They can do what they want. Do it to some extent, right? And it's not just about, speaking of previous leadership, it's not just about bad people. I mean, look, any group of 500 plus people is going to have some D-bags in it.
Sure.
Maybe that's overly cynical.
Although there were no douchebags at the Dead of Winter Festival, not one. Everybody was good there.
Okay. But you're gonna have. I mean, the stupid civil service system. You take a bubble test, and that's 3/4 of the way to a job because you could remember some material for a few days. There's no test for are you an absolute a-hole to absolutely everybody you come in contact with. Like, I don't know, now retired, going to collect a pension for the rest of his life. Sergeant Doherty, who cost this city, was part of costing the city $2.1 million for bullying a teen into confessing to a murder she didn't commit, and nobody committed, by the way, and then was conspired with another officer to fabricate and manipulate evidence, according to a civil jury. In the Nat Cosenza case, and that the judgment in that case was $8 million. City wasn't part of it. It hung those cops out to dry. And I don't know the guy. I just know about the things that he's, the money that he's, that taxpayers have had to subsidize his behavior for. But people I talk to, nobody likes this guy.
Nobody does. No. That is a consistent, especially at City Hall. But they're afraid. So here's the thing, Tom. They're afraid to say his name. So to me, that should indicate something, right? What is he, a gangster? Like, you know what I mean? You're afraid. What is he? What is he? Who's the bad guy in Harry Potter? He who must not be named. Why can't we say these people's names? Right? Like, this is insane. That doesn't make any sense. If we're not allowed to talk about it, then how do we ever move forward? And then, you said you framed it in the view of this 20-year period, right? And then there are a lot of people talking about this has existed for even further back. Of course, we have a significant population in the city of Worcester who happens to be non-white, right? So we have a lot of African American folks. We have a ton of folks from various of the Caribbean islands, right? And then, of course, we have a even further growing now Southeast Asian population, all of whom look different than us, who have expressed over the past 40 or 50 years that the abuse levels have been even higher. And those cases have been lost, right? Those situations are gone from history. So if there is a young black man, say from, like, I don't know, 1992, who got beaten up by a guy who's a current deputy chief, I'm not saying that I know, but I'm saying that I might know, right? Then that deputy chief, who might have also sued the city to stop current Chief Saucier from becoming chief, is just sitting there waiting to get himself out, right? That narrows it down to 3 people, right? Real quick. But what if that happened? And what if that young black man is still here in the city of Worcester and has to see this deputy chief operate in charge of officers for 30 years? Right? I mean, how would you feel if you were that young man, now older, now experienced, now owning your own business, and you see this officer on a regular basis, and he's celebrated, and he gets awards, and he gets all these promotions after he beat you senseless back in the 90s, and you were given no protection? How would you feel? I know how I would feel. I would feel afraid, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. So how much has that fear affected his ability to have a successful life as an adult? Probably significantly, right? And I think that that's the thing that we lose in these conversations, is that there are actual real victims who have suffered tremendous pain because it's been done by someone who's supposed to be trustworthy. That's the whole conversation. It's the same conversation with the scandal with the Catholic Church. It's the same conversation when we talk about politicians who fail, is that when leadership fails and commits these crimes, it's 10 times worse than when somebody else does it, because they are in a position of authority and should be held to a higher standard. That's all we're saying.
It is
held to a higher standard.
It is just basic math, right? That when you have a police force of 500 plus people, that you're going to have some, quote, bad apples. But that's not something to criticize our elected folks for, because that's going to happen, right? What you criticize them for, though, is when they start to talk about how public safety is their most important thing to them. But yet you have people within law enforcement, you've given them a firearm and other tools used, which are often used for offensive purposes, maybe legitimately. I'm not saying that all use of force is illegitimate, certainly not. But you've given them essentially extrajudicial powers, right? They have rights while in uniform that the rest of us don't, and they have protections for what they do while they're in uniform. The rest of us don't. And then they have an investigations unit that will investigate them. Not at all. Right? There's just overwhelming evidence of the internal investigations are largely a farce.
Yeah, the thing
you don't care about public safety, because that is a threat to public safety.
True. Everything you're saying is right. That's the thing that really is striking, is that immunity, right? Which I think is massively, massively unconstitutional to the supposed people who believe in the constitutional framework of the United States, and they're originalists. There was never, ever any indication that the folks that wrote that document wanted police to be held with complete and utter immunity. There was not the case, because the police, as we know it, didn't exist until the Civil War, and the powers that they have been infused with were never intended. It was never intended. No standing army, no standing arresting powers. They were supposed to be appointed and then unappointed terms, blah 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 blah, all kinds of stuff back then. I'm not going to get into that because those folks had their own problems, but the concept of immunity already exists. So you would think that the investigative body would at least go through the steps of making the investigation, knowing full well that officers never going to suffer from anything except in the most extreme circumstances where they're shooting somebody live on TV. And even then they might get away with it, right? Because there's all these things that have happened, where we've seen officers do things crazy and still not be charged and still not go to jail for the same amount of time as a regular person. But they don't even do that. They laugh in your face. They really, truly do. And so this document, while interesting that there's going to be something, I guess, in the future, because city manager says that he's giving somebody else the ability to give the report on the civil review board, which is interesting, right? Which again, punt, right? Great job, punt. Punt until the third quarter. Let's going to punt this down the line. And I hope everybody who understand this. The city council and the current structure of city leadership, whether it's on the management side or the elected side, they want to do one thing and one thing only. And they want to punt until you forget about it. That's what they've been doing for decades. They hope that you will not maintain passion about these subjects, whether it's police, brutality and just terrible things, or the cable bill being too high, or this or that. They just don't want you to think about it anymore. They just want to punt until they can build a nice, shiny building downtown and say, look what we did. Distraction. Look at this thing right here. That's the whole goal. And it's up to you to hold them accountable and call them and text them and go to City Hall on Tuesdays and continue the pressure campaign that has to be done, because otherwise they will not listen. They will not listen.
One thing that none of them are ever going to talk about is fixing BOPs, fixing the internal investigations, because that's going to be the trigger for the unions to really come back and, really push hard. And we saw, look, those that meeting, and I understand, right? Like I don't want to go too far here. Unions, there's a reason why it's derived from the word unity, right? The two unions got together. They wanted to show unity in the face of these accusations. I get it, but they weren't exactly hiding that they were there to tell council, you better be with us.
No, 100%. It was a threat, but it wasn't a threat to the public. It was a threat to the majority on the city council. You better back us, or we're going to punish you.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a threat, but it was certainly an attempt of it was certainly intimidating. Yeah, I believe that was as designed, and they've certainly responded, because you haven't heard a word about it since.
No, it's been absolute stone cold silence. The only thing that's happened, I guess, at all is that all of a sudden Anthony Petrone has been empowered to go on Facebook and make commentary on a regular basis. Speaking of which, Anthony, have you doxed any 17-year-old girls lately? Have you hidden any evidence for Thomas Duffy lately? Because I'm not afraid of you. But that's the thing, is that other people, again, people running for city council, people on city council, will not say the names of these people because they're cowards, Tommy. This is really where we're at. It's cowardly behavior. You have to hold them accountable by saying their names in public and attaching them to the specific acts that they did. And if you don't do that, then you're just, and listen, I know this from personal experience, right? I've talked about this 1,000 times in public. I have a record. And every single time someone has a chance to bring it up, they will. Believe me, they will bring it up. It doesn't matter how much work I do. It doesn't matter how much you and I have done together, or I've done with Manny, or I've done in other situations. It doesn't matter that I bring economic activity to the city. It'll always be, he's got this in his background, right? But when it comes to those folks in positions of authority, they never hold them accountable. Nope. Ever, never, not once. Have you heard them bring up the names? Mayor Petty, he wrote this thing about Councilor King in this education meeting, right? He went right on the attack, attacking him. But have you ever heard Mayor Petty talk about Anthony Petrone getting death threats to that girl's family? Have you ever heard him say anything about that? Oh, they apologized, right, behind closed doors. But did Mayor Petty release a statement saying that that is illegal or that Anthony Petrone should be charged with something? Right? No. But Councilor King apparently met with someone on email, and right away the mayor releases a statement. That's what you have for leadership in the city. And it's your fault. I'm sorry, voters of Worcester. It's your fault. You voted for that and you continue to vote for that. So it's hard to I don't even know what to say to you guys sometimes. I don't get it.
Yep. And I just close with it's apparently the city is taking the position that that was the determination of BOPS in the Cosenza case, that those officers did nothing wrong. First of all, that's just not true.
They didn't fake an entire case against the guy who didn't do it, right? That's not wrong. It's okay to do that, Tommy. It's okay to fake a case against the guy who wasn't the guy. And send him to jail for how long? How long did he go to jail, Tom?
He was almost all of his sentence of 16 years.
A guy went to jail for almost 16 years for something he didn't do, and they knew he didn't do it, and they still continue to this day to not admit it. And now they've been found liable because eventually the truth will come out. Eventually, someone will tell. It's always going to be that way. Somebody will tell. It's always that way. I'm Irish, I know. Someone will tell.
And so if you read the report, they investigated after Cosenza filed his lawsuit, and so keep that in mind too, because they're not going to say anything in the report that's going to impact the case, right? But nonetheless, they can basically go right up to the line where if they ask the next question, the next logical question, they'd start to uncover the problems, and so they stop. I don't want to get into all the details of the case because we'll be here forever. But relate specific pieces of evidence or specific areas of contention, they go right up to the line and they stop. For example, they frame the photo array that they did as, well, that was an accepted practice at the time. It was the way they did the photo array. They don't do them like that. That's absolutely true. However, what you were never allowed to do was indicate that who they believe the suspect is within the photos they were showing. And he's also was never allowed to tell the victim of the crime that if you can't identify the person within this photo array, we're not going to be able to continue with the investigation. See, and that was what was revealed in court, and that was never okay. And that's just one thing. So one slight element of the absolute abject and false case. And if you look at what the jury found one officer responsible for manipulating and fabricating evidence, and another officer for conspiring with him to do it. And you look at the BOPS report and it says it did nothing wrong. Well, there's obviously, these two things are not in linked up here, right? They're not they're not dancing to the same beat. Well, whose job is it to figure out what the differences are and what really happened? So we're protecting the public from potentially dangerous people who are willing to maybe willing to frame people for crimes they didn't commit. And the answer is no one. And that's how you know they don't care at all.
You would think it would be the Public Safety Committee, but of course the chairman of the Public Safety Committee has determined over the last 9 years at least not to hold any hearings or any items related to anything related to the police. And so then you're stuck with zero opportunity for public discussion in other than individuals getting up and being upset, but then the mayor has squashed them pretty regularly, right? And of course the new rule, by the way, that last week he was holding people to that 30 minutes. Again, they're trying to shut you down on every single thing. They really are. They're trying. He said he's gonna try to enforce the 30-minute public comment period. So there's a way around that, Tom. You know what that way is, right?
What's that?
Citizen petitions. Put more petitions on the thing. Get your 3 minutes in that way. And so we would need citizens to continue to put in petitions. Of course, they need to be framed in a specific way to make sure that the city clerk and the city solicitor don't conspire to keep them off. which well, Tom and I are more than welcome to show you how to write those and get yourself on there so you can have your say in front of the city council.
Yeah, it's somebody should just have an item before the council that says that we limit that we change the voting places to one, and that be inside the police department in an area that's not open to the public, and then only the cops can vote, and then it's like their dream world.
You know what, Tommy, that would be an interesting scenario. I feel like eventually, though, there is momentum, I think, for investigation and for, eventually something has to come out. I mean, either A, we're headed down the world where it's just going to be America just ceases to exist, or B, it's not that bad, and we're going to try to have some
I don't want
kind
to
of
get America not existing. But at this point, I see very little evidence that anything is going to systemically change. They're going to write some policies, and I mean, that's good. That is what they could hold people account for. But if you have, and maybe the influence of this chief will change the way Bops handles its business. But why should we have any confidence in that?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen anything yet because the same folks that have been in charge of Bops are still in charge of Bops. So is this chief now that he's
the one that was with Doherty on the interrogating the teen and bullying her into confessing to a crime she didn't commit, nor did anyone commit because the child wasn't murdered. He was transferred to Bops after that case, where he stayed until he retired.
Yeah. So
he'll now, this disgusting piece of garbage will continue to collect a pension for the rest of his life that should be going to good cops, but instead is going to a piece of human trash.
That's what now. So this is the real interesting part, Tom, right? Because that particular officer, I've had officers come up to me, some of whom have threatened me via text. Love those guys, and said, "How can you say things about that guy? He's a good family man. He's got kids in college, and
he bullied a child into confessing to a murder. That's why."
Exactly. But and he wasn't held accountable for it, right? It's not like other people that haven't done that.
The chief at the time, another disgusting human being, I told you I was going to yell today, another disgusting piece of garbage, patted him on the back and told him he did a good job.
Right, exactly. Said you did a great job lying and bullying and pushing a little girl.
And let's not remember, right. And let's not remember that City Manager O'Brien and City Manager Augustus went, "Oh, that's all right. We'll just keep all those people on."
Yeah.
Even when the entire council had turned against the chief of police, he still made it another 3 years.
He did. He made it another 3 years. And hey, credit to City Manager Batista for getting rid of Steve Sargent. And I credit him with the move. But it definitely took too long, right? And that's on Ed Augustus's legacy. By the way, Ed Augustus, who was promoted by our current governor, and again, the people of Massachusetts, what you see, these things that you see, you voted for that. You voted for that.
And look, I don't think we all had some idea that discipline had gone completely to nothing under Steve Sargent, but he wasn't as just like vocally, "I don't care, I'm going to do what I want because I run this place." And the council at the time and the city manager at the time, "Well, yeah, you do," and tucked their tail between their legs and showed zero leadership whatsoever. While this man used to go on Twitter and criticize judges on Twitter.
Yeah. The sitting chief of police.
Sitting chief of police. And he kept his job. It's stunning. So further harm that comes to people of this city because of a breakdown in police discipline or bad people that nobody would get rid of, it won't be. It won't be. Don't make no mistake. There will be no accountability. But it is on the heads of the six who just, you wouldn't even let your colleague ask a question about $1.2 million being transferred to pay out bad behavior of a city employee with taxpayer money. This is what they want, though. They want that to continue. They want to keep taking your money to pay out lawsuits so they don't have to do anything about it, because then it might have political implications for them with the police department. But they'll lecture us about public safety.
And then anybody who does raise these points, whether they're a person running for election or they're someone in the media, they'll bury you and they'll criticize you and they'll
for me.
Yeah, exactly. They'll deny access, all kinds of things, right? They'll try to do
any access.
I know you don't, but I'm saying that's the point, is that you raise legitimate questions. They don't want you to raise those legitimate questions. So what do? They make it harder for you to do your job. But of course, eventually that spills over, because you can't have someone who's such a bad actor and a group of people that are bad actors continue to abuse people and have nobody respond. Right? Eventually, someone's going to respond and push back, and I hope there's more and more people. And please reach out to us, and we'll help you with this information. Again, we'll show you what to do. We limited in our ability to do things? Yeah, we are limited. There's not we're not asking you to do anything crazy, but at least we can put pressure publicly. It's the only thing we have available, which is to criticize them in public. Make sure that when they go to whatever a bakery opening that they go to, that you ask them questions about police accountability, right? That's what you got to do. Like, it's the only way to do it, because you got to embarrass them, and if you embarrass them, then maybe they'll change. That's it. It's the only way to do
it. And it's like
coming to a ribbon cutting near you.
And they've done a very good job over the years of like using, something will happen, right? There'll be a catalyst event, and people will then be upset, and like they'll come into council and they'll yell, right? Because they're upset. And it's like, the people in the city, median household income is the 7th lowest of the 59 cities in the state. A poverty rate is 19.5%. People seem to associate poverty with, not working or something. These are people that are probably working 2 jobs that are actually garbage jobs, right?
Yeah.
They got stuff to do, and they don't have the capacity to chase you for years to do anything.
Right.
So that's what you get. Your inaction is what causes these pops of people screaming at you.
Right.
Because the same thing happens over and over and over again, and you still do nothing.
But so here's the thing, Tommy. Emotion is not a bad thing when you've been oppressed for a long time, especially if the person is like, so the person raises their voice, they yell, they swear, they drop a few F-bombs, right? That's not a bad thing. At least they're not doing something insane, like, I don't know, spray painting another person in their face, right? So like, that's the kind of stuff that we would say, don't do that. But they're not allowing, they can't yell. Like, oh, decorum. You gotta calm down. Well, no, this kind of behavior deserves to be yelled at, and the only reason it hasn't been yelled at is because 6 people, current 6 version of the majority, is too cowardly to address it, and that's what it comes down to. The 6-member majority that currently sits on the council and is running the city and will not hold accountability, they are cowards, and if you vote for them, you're a coward. That's really what it comes down to. And I have no problem saying that to your face. Well, if you vote for that group of people to continue the same thing that they've been doing, you're a coward.
I wouldn't say that. I think people should vote their values. But you should be, whomever, whether it is the candidate you supported or not, who gets elected, you should be seeking them to take action on any of this, instead of continuing to watch millions of dollars. Look, there's $4 million plus already out the door with the last, 15 years or something, 20 years or something. There's millions more coming. Millions, plural. Things that already happened.
I kind of want to get beat up by the police so I can get some money.
The Cosenza case, the brave soul that beat up a pastor in front of the kids in his own church.
Oh yeah, that one's coming. That one's coming too. That's gonna be ugly.
And
By the
By
way,
the way,
that pastor is related to like a couple of judges, so that's coming. That's bad. That's going to be a bad one. City's going to pay hard for that. That's going to be ugly because that's a case of privilege versus privilege, Tom. So there's going to be
yeah,
real serious consequences there.
yeah,
Yeah.
the serious crime of disturbing the peace in the middle
Yeah.
of the day
In front of his church.
in front of his own church, and then
Yeah.
you know
Oh,
he
it's
didn't
going to
show
be bad.
1 ounce of aggression to that cop.
No,
Never
he
moved.
ran away. He ran away like I would too if someone was chasing after me. And he tased him on his back. He was on his stomach and he tased him in his back. Right? Just
But
crazy.
ask Duffy. He'll tell you they should be allowed to do that and more. He should have been able to shoot that guy.
That's Tom Duffy and his wife, they would love to be able to have that guy shot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Solid move by that family.
So they're perfectly fine with taking your money and giving it to people who have been harmed and not doing anything to stop the harm. They're perfectly fine with that until they show me otherwise. I don't know what to tell you. And it has been said by one of the people in that 6-member majority related to that case, to the case with the pastor, that's, and I quote, that's what that officer was trained to do, end quote. Well, that makes the problem systemic then, because there was nothing about that was okay. You don't get to tackle a guy and tase him in the back and beat him up in front of his kids in his own church because you don't like something he said.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah,
but
sure.
Actually, they do, and they demand that they be able to. And that's the actual scary part, is that they not only believe that they should be able to do this, they demand that nothing happens to them when they do.
They think
we have politicians,
the right way.
And we have politicians that will go along with that.
Right. They don't see the connection between that kind of negative and aggressive physical behavior by police officers and then fear that is instituted into specific groups of people. They don't see the connection. They think the only way to take down crime is to take it down tough. And of course, there's no science behind that at all, right? So of course, they'll end up denying science. There's no proof of that. There's plenty of examples where that is not working, including, and of course, there's been, of course, decades of de-escalation and all kinds of stuff where we've seen actual results, actual scientific results where de-escalation has led to less confrontation. But that officer clearly did not go to his de-escalation class at all, right? Nope. The use of force pyramid, yada, yada, yada.
You know what? All that could have been, that situation could have been totally diffused with a very simple thing. Don't say anything back. Walk away. Yeah. The call was over. They were done. All he had to do was get in his car and drive away. But he was looking for that confrontation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was that's the thing that, okay, so then this is the conversation that I had a ton of times, Tom, is that obviously police officers are people too. So if a police officer is having a bad, and it's already, we know it's a high pressure job. So when someone's in a bad mood, goes to work, that's a high pressure job. What's the most likely scenario? That if there is a high pressure situation, that it's very likely that if they then engage with someone who's upset, that it's going to explode because you are already upset. And so the training, the de-escalation training normally starts with not responding, right? The use of force pyramid thing. If anybody's ever seen that, normally what you do is you let the person scream themselves out. So let the person yell and scream until they start to move towards you. If they move towards you, then you start to use the use of force pyramid, right? But most of the time, people who want to yell, they just want to yell. They yell, they get it out of themselves, they move on. I know that happens with me. Whenever I'm upset, I scream and yell. Gino just checked in the cast. Me and Gino, we yelled at each other one time, right? And we got it out. We got it out of our system because we were upset for a second, and then we realized that we weren't really upset at each other. We were more upset at a situation. And so you can handle that if you're two grown-ups. But in this case, you had someone who took one step, and then boom, he went to this other level. And of course, you end up with a pastor on the ground, tased multiple times in his back because you couldn't handle yourself. So you shouldn't have the job.
So Gino's criticism of police union leadership. I understand where that comes from, but look, police unions are there to represent their members, other cops, and they should do that unabashedly. That's their job. What we should expect, though, is our elected representatives and city leadership to not cower when they speak. That's it.
Just simple stuff. Simple stuff.
That's it.
We're
Just
going
don't be
long
afraid.
today, by the way. It looks like we're deep into it in our.
Yeah, you got me. I knew I was going to yell about this, but anyway. So back to the document to wrap it up.
Yeah.
This is all fine, and I'm certainly appreciative of it being able to get some information because God knows the councilors aren't going to speak on it nor be allowed to speak on it. But I'm glad to have some information. However, I see bops in this document, and that's just not. It's not serious. It's not serious. There are models used in governments across the country, in cities at the city and state level, to have an independent investigator who's part of city government, has some autonomy, is quasi-independent, if you will. There's a lot of models for this that would enable, one, there to be less openings at the police department, right, which is supposed to be very dangerous, apparently, because you can move these people from this department that does nothing that's productive to roles where they could actually, serve the public. And you would have an independent look at these cases. And they're not going to do it because they're going to be told by their owners not to. And yeah, if you're a city councilor and you're listening right now, that was probably pretty offensive. Good. Get off your ass.
They can be as offended as they want, but they won't do anything about it. And so they'll take the money from that group.
I understand, like, getting, election, you run for office to win. I get it. But I mean, when you just, I don't know, actually. I don't want to go there. Let me retract that. Because I was going to a place that was very cynical, and I don't know that that's the motivation. I don't know what the motivation is, but to say it is electioneering, that's not fair because I don't have evidence for that. So I'll retract that. Just real quickly, I was sitting here at home watching the city council meeting on Tuesday, and like after the 6th time my name was said, I felt like I started to twitch. I was like, "This is weird," and I don't like it.
It was great. I kept saying, "What's going on?" The Tom Marino show. I was there.
Honestly, so there was a discussion. Joanna Hampton Dance, who ran for city council in the last election, had a petition for city council to file an amendment to the charter, which has to go through the state house, to implement a recall provision. And naturally, I took the position, no piecemealing. You open it or don't. Open it or live. Let's actually build actual city government through our charter, or live with what you got. You don't get to piecemeal it when it's convenient. Well, you do. They could if they wanted to, but I don't think that there's much appetite for it. You don't get to piecemeal it when it's in your benefit. And that turned into discussion about what I wanted. So I just want to make my position clear. I did go to a committee meeting of municipal ops, and argued. Look, you've got to collect 15% of registered voters to get an election on the ballot, to have a commission, right? It's an old law and it's a stupid law, and it was written long before we had also automatic voter registration, which inflates the rolls. 15% right now is like 17,000, so you'd probably have to get 20,000 for those that weren't certified, right? And that's within a couple thousand of the number of people that voted in the last election. That's what we're talking about here. And so I went. Mayor Petty got on the floor at some point in the last few months, and came right out and said he supported it. We should do a charter commission. And look, this hasn't been done in 40 years in this city, so like that. People weren't aware of the details is not surprising, and why would they? Like, it's not a criticism that they didn't understand all mechanisms that go into this. But the only way to have the election for a commission to rewrite the charter, and then the charter goes back to the voters have to approve it, is to collect the 15% of registered voters, which is a big hill to climb. And so after Mayor Petty made his comment, I engaged, and we talked a bit about it. And I was, and he was, under the impression that council could do that, put the election on the ballot. It cannot. It can do what it did with like the CPA, where it could put the question on the ballot, but in this case, you'd need a charter on the ballot for them to put it on there, right? They cannot just wish an election onto the state ballot, because even our municipal ballots are really state ballots. And so I was taking the position, well, the only way to do this then is to appoint a committee and then follow the commission rules, because there are a bunch of rules about public meetings and a whole bunch of stuff. It's a whole process outlined by state law. And so, let's talk about that. I wasn't looking to, dictate the whole thing. I just wanted to see a fair commission with people, that wasn't preordained what was going to happen by the people that were appointed to it, right? And there isn't any appetite for that within council, as far as I know. No appetite for that. They want no part of it. And then, but Petty's order that he requested about how to do charter commission, that gets sent to the municipal operations department. And I basically just argued, look, it's 20,000 signatures. Like, we're talking about 20,000 signatures. It's a huge hill to climb. The thing's 40 years old. The case is not like it's not close. Like, if you're arguing, should we take a look at this or not? The answer is it's not a close decision. It's been 40 years. The thing was written in 82. Or 80, I forget, that might not be exact year, but it was the 80s that passed. And it was pretty clear to me, at least my interpretation of what that committee said. Is Council Bergman is the chair of that committee. Council Clory is the vice chair. It was pretty clear that they weren't interested in seeing this advance, but with the signatures, which is weird, because if I have the signatures, I don't need them, right? There's nothing. It's ordained by state law. They have no say in it. And look, that is their prerogative. They're elected and appointed to the committee. They can do that. So when this came up because of Joanna's petition on Tuesday, I was pretty surprised. I guess the committee is going to continue to look at this, and good. And if it's on their agenda, I'll be there. But it seems quite clear to me that council has, for whatever reason, the cynical view is it protecting themselves, but could be other reasons, right? They don't think that this is something that should be driven by them. There was a process in the 90s that was driven by council, and when the charter went in front of the voters, it failed. So there's that historical backdrop. So, I think I've said this before here, but I'll say it again. I'm not really ready to say what the plan is, but we are evaluating our options on how to move forward. There will be moving forward. And I intend on seeing a real city government worthy of the people of Worcester, not this awful monarchy we have now.
Monarchy.
And
love it.
And I mean, it is. They ordain a king, is what they do, and that's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's certainly not Eric's fault. Eric's doing a job with the rules he was handed. He didn't make the game. He's just a player in it. So it's not his fault at all. But
I feel like if he's watching, which sometimes he does through other people's accounts, if he's watching right now, that he laughed at that right there, that he laughed.
I mean, I think we talked about this. We had a short conversation about my efforts with charter, and he didn't. I brought it up because I just wanted to say it's not about you, and he didn't seem worried about it. So, which was good. But yeah, I do intend on seeing a government implemented that is worthy of the people of our city, that is a real government, and that council has declined to participate. It would have been easier. Maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have been better. So onward we march. I don't mean to be, sketchy about the way I'm presenting it. I just, we're talking about our next steps. We have a good idea where we're going. It would be unadvantageous to the effort to reveal that publicly at a time where it is, can be used against us. So, at the very first second that folks that have been following this effort, we feel like it's time to, let the masses know where we're headed. I'm certainly going to be very vocal about it. Just don't want to invite any bad actors or folks that don't want to see this happen to, give them a strategic advantage in some way.
Sarah, if once I know all the members of the committee, I'll publicly reveal it. But I have yet to know, so he hasn't told me. So I'm telling, if he hasn't told me all the members, then he's doing a good job keeping it compartmentalized.
So, like, officially, the We is a nonprofit organization I co-founded called Mass Spring. But I mean, naturally, consulting with many, many people and getting, doing a lot of listening and presenting potential avenues we have here to people and getting their feedback, right, from a wide variety of, kind of political leanings. Because this, in the end, when this thing gets on the ballot, this needs to be across, any political lines, right? And good governance is a thing that I think a lot of people can get behind. So, if we get to a good place, I hope to have a very large coalition of people working toward this that would probably never work on anything else and probably never will work on anything else together, because some of those people wholly disagree on just about everything with others. But on, having a good structure in place that our government can operate with oversight, where somebody is not just counting the beans, but also evaluating how the money is being used and if we're getting the outcomes we intended with policy, for example, right? It's not all about fraud, waste, and abuse or conspiracy theory. It's also about having oversight of policy to ensure that what we're doing, what city policy is performing, is doing what we intended it to do and is the best option available and all that stuff, right? And that's why the founders of our country, for their many flaws, invented this concept of equal, independent branches of government, which cities in our state are supposed to have, but we absolutely do not, because of the people.
We do not. Worcester does not.
So that is the charter update. I apologize for being a bit mealy-mouthed about it, but just trying to protect our flank here as we try and move this effort, which, look, there are some people in the city that are opposed to it because the way things are now work out for them well. And that's not directed at council. I have talked to, councilors are generally, in theory at least, are well aware it's time to look at this thing. That's not a shot at council. But, there are people in our city that what happens now works well for them and they don't want to see a change. So being strategic about what we say and when is important. How's that for a mealy-mouthed public statement?
It was great. It was great. We're looking forward to charter review. Charter review. Let's get it.
Yes. And there's a long time between now and when this thing could potentially be on the ballot, and the secrecy now is certainly. It would be detrimental to try and continue that up until the day of voting, right? Obviously, this will all be very public. I just want to make sure we do that at the right time. And you, lastly, wanted to talk about, we got two things. Let's do them quickly. Madison Properties.
Okay. So
formerly the preferred developer of the city of Worcester, now a pariah.
Okay, so Madison Properties, and it's not just Madison Properties. There's a bunch of companies out here. So when we're talking about at the Tuesday City Council meeting, there was a report or an order on there from Councilor Hajiaj, which was asking about the ballpark district and it led to this conversation, partially because I brought it up, about Madison Properties not being held accountable. And then Sarah, chickens are next, I promise. We're going to do chickens in 1 second. But so I brought up this thought, and then the counselors just batted it around the horn. What is real accountability for Madison Properties? And my version of accountability involves them paying the city back money. And so that, of course, that's never going to happen under the current framework of the way that it works. So the only other opportunity for accountability would be public statements by the city councilors themselves, by the mayor, by the city manager, criticizing Madison Properties publicly for their open and abject lie in the ballpark negotiations. So they remember they were going to build the hotels behind the ballpark, the other buildings back there. They pulled out, they got a TIF, a special TIF that's separate from the ballpark TIF just for those properties. They pulled out of it and said, we don't have the capital to do it. And then magically, we're able to come up with $7 million for a new project for Holy Cross less than 2 weeks later. Now, the official statement from Madison Properties are the two projects don't connect. Right, they're not. Neither two shall meet. Right, they're not related to each other. But the same developer was able to find $7 million. And if I, as a renter, don't pay my rent on project A, and then I show up in another apartment with that rent money, I could be held accountable in housing court for lying to landlord A. So why isn't there a process to hold them accountable? It doesn't exist. It's not going to happen until Tom changes the charter and we have a real, actual accountable city government. So the only thing we have left is city councilors who will criticize the company directly, and they will not do that. They will not. Well, there's 3 of them that will, but the rest of them refuse on principle to even say the name of the property of the company, and it's Madison Properties. Go after them directly. Name the names. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. So quickly, first, I wasn't aware that there were councils that wouldn't say the name. There has been plenty of criticism from Madison Properties, but I guess it's come from a few people. So, touche.
It's just a very small group of people.
Gotcha.
So, and again, Mayor Petty releasing statements, dropping bombs against his fellow councilors, and I didn't see any passion like this for a company that just stole millions of dollars from the city of Worcester. By the way, Madison Properties, apparently being a developer, one of the number one things about being a developer in Massachusetts is regularly not footing the bill with municipalities all over the state, because Madison Properties has done this over and over and over again, and no one ever holds them accountable. No one, no investigations, no details, and they keep getting deals. I can't figure it out. How do they keep getting these deals?
So
maybe someone should look into that, Tom. I don't know.
A couple things. I assume that that they could do this. Maybe there's some idiotic law at the state level that prevents it. But it seems to me that both the situation with the hotels for WPI and this situation could really be solved quite easily by doing stuff. The situation with the WPI hotels, that could have been a simple deed restriction could have prevented that from being sold to a nonprofit. But we don't want to put any restrictions on big business.
Right.
Sounds like just like the country as a whole. With the ballpark or all of these delayed properties that are supposed to be constructed, but now market conditions have changed. So that's the city of Worcester's problem, because the developers must be revered. Make the TIFs contingent on permits to build will be pulled by X day. That's it. You don't have shovels in the ground this day. Well, your permit's pulled to put shovels in the ground that day. Your TIF goes away. The end. I don't know why we should care about their access to capital or what the cost of construction. Don't care.
Doesn't matter. Don't make promises then.
Yeah, like you're a for-profit company. You're here to make as much money as possible. Why 100%. We're worried about their profit is beyond me.
It makes no sense. Hey, let me just address Vienna's thing about the city manager did say in that discussion that he could use eminent domain to claim back some of the property behind the ballpark, except that it can't happen under state law, Vienna, until the TIF expires. And the TIF doesn't expire technically until a year after the developer, in this question, Madison Properties, abandons the project. So technically the city has to wait now until next year to redevelop the property. And then the city manager could reclaim it and then use it, blah, 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 all those things. But that's because of the way the TIF was written, which gave this buffer, and then the state will enforce that on the city. And they have definitely to it. Yes, they were aspirations.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, another case of who gets, some people get held accountable and some people don't, and the juxtaposition of the two is
and they do not.
But another take on this. Another take on this. I'm Madison's a fairly big developer, right? They've done lots of work, have at least raised lots of money to do this work. You'd imagine have a pretty good insight into market conditions and whatnot, right? They know economic stuff. What does it say about the viability of the ballpark area that they don't want to build a property there?
Oh, wait, don't go there, Tom. Don't go there because Mayor Petty will be upset with you. Remember, this is going to be the only minor league ballpark project in the history of the United States of America that is going to return profit to the municipality. It's going to be the first ever. And why do we know this? Because Mayor Petty said so. We have to take him serious at his word, and so this will return money to the city of Worcester. That we can't question that, Tom. How dare you? I
don't want to go back too much into old stuff about this because that's been talked about a lot. I just want to point out that former mayor and then city councilor Lukes, whom I disagree with on a whole host of things, but love dearly, she's an amazing woman, was the one councilor who said, I want an economic study, like an economic evaluation of this thing, and she was the only one to vote for it.
Yep, that's it. It is what it is. Yep. It is what it is. All right, let's talk about the chickens before Sarah gets mad at us.
We don't want that.
All right.
We like Sarah.
All right, so real quick, here's the things with the chickens. Here's when you can see the city council actually showing you in advance that they have already ordained a plan and they're going to put it into place, right? So, and this is an amazing little thing that they do, right? So the mayor can dodge and move around stuff, but he can use his majority. In this case, he used two mouthpieces this past Tuesday in Councilor Russell and Councilor Bergman to create this false dichotomy about the idea of backyard chickens or front yard chickens or wherever you want to put chickens in the city of Worcester. Okay, so George Russell says, well, there needs to be a noise ordinance. It's past Sarah's bedtime. I'm going quick, Sarah. There needs to be a noise ordinance, right? Because the roosters are too loud. By the way, notice that there is no noise ordinance for parties. There's no noise ordinance for dogs in the city of Worcester. Okay, right? So people can have barking dogs, but the roosters can't, have to be quieted. Okay, I get it. The roosters are hard to deal with. And then Councilor Bergman brings up, well, people don't know how to do this, so it's going to be dirty, and it's going to lead to rats, and it's going to lead to disease, and all this other kind of stuff, right? And Worcester's just too dense, urban dense, to be able to pull this off. Okay. And the response should always be, Boston has chickens. Springfield has chickens. Hartford has chickens. Brockton has chickens. Manchester, New Hampshire, the entire state of New Hampshire has chickens. The entire state of Maine has chickens. The entire state of Vermont, yes, they're less dense, I get it. But all the dense things go out the window, and all the non-dense things go out the window. People should be allowed to raise their own food, and that is why we have a false economy when it comes to grocery stores in New England. We are sending out our farm food to Canada and then out west. That is a fact. We ship out our farm food. We don't have a lot of direct access. There happens to be a farm in Leicester that you can go and buy some stuff that's not too far away, but it's very difficult in Massachusetts because the regulations are the way they are. So we ship food out and then we ship food in. Most of our food comes from California. we would save as much money on this guy, bro. He's so good, dude. He just slid that in there. He knew what he was doing. So we ship food from Florida, right? We have lots of advertising up here, California oranges and all this other kind of stuff. We bring food in and we create higher prices through this. And it happens all over the country. We're shipping food around and we don't have local food economies. So Councilor Bergman knows this. He knows this and he still says it because they already have a plan in place to create a permitting system. And both Councilor Russell, who said, well, I disagree with my colleague da 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 da. But I do agree about there should be some kind of permitting thing. And then Councilor Bergman said, I disagree with da 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 da, but I do agree that there should be some kind of permitting thing. And then everybody else buys into that system. Okay, what happens in a permitting process, Tom? Let's talk about it. How much is the fee for permitting going to be? $25, $50, $100. Who knows with the city of Worcester? It could be in the thousands. And what does this do then? It prevents exactly what the idea of having backyard chickens is, or front gardens, or all those kind of things, is to allow folks who have less resources raise their own food. A permitting system just keeps it exactly the way it is. It just keeps it exactly the way it is and doesn't allow us to affect our own local economy. So when the price of eggs spike because there's this big fight between the Biden and Trump administration on the transition out, and they kill chickens or don't kill chickens, or they send eggs or they don't send eggs, and then the price of eggs shoots up, we can't control it with any local produce. We can't have any control over it because our own city councilors are in a deal to stop it from happening. And my proposal to the rest of you is to ask them why. Why would they want a permitting process? Why? Why would they want? Oh man, our chat, man. Sometimes people are killing me with this chat. Guys, if there's a rooster in your neighborhood, that's not that big of a deal. I don't really want to hear you talk about complaining when the city will throw all kinds of construction things in your way at 6:30 in the morning, and they'll do all kinds of noise all the time. We have gunshots going off, people setting off fireworks at all hours of the night. Is a rooster really going to be that big of a problem? But it would be in the West Side, which is what tells you why they're making the decision that they're making. In the West Side, you wouldn't be able to have chickens. In the West Side, you wouldn't have to deal with these things. They'll only permit them in certain neighborhoods. Councilor Bergman, in his statement, he mentioned the word neighborhood 3 times. What is he saying? He doesn't want chickens around his rental properties in the city because it will affect the value of his properties in his mind. But by the way, Councilor Bergman, if you're watching, and it looks like that you are, there's no evidence, none, that chickens reduce property values. None. Zero. So you're just literally imagining the scenario. Stop holding up the ability for the poor to feed themselves. Stop doing it, because I'm going to hold you accountable at every single meeting, every time. You vote against senior citizens, you vote against the poor, you hate the elders, you hate the poor. That is the legacy of this council majority. Is there anything but a West Side?
I don't know about
the
that.
Thing is that there's other sides.
Fact check: Springfield does not allow chickens.
No, that's okay. I shouldn't say this. There are plenty of chickens in Springfield, just like there's chickens in Worcester, and they are not enforced rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're right.
Boston has a permitting system that is allowed in certain neighborhoods. I didn't look into what. Springfield does not have a permitting system. No chickens.
They let chickens. And by the way, there's plenty of people with chickens in Worcester right now, and they just don't enforce it. They look the other way. Davis Creamery there. There's quite a few companies that buy chickens from buy eggs from local people and sell them right here in the city of Worcester. And those people are, often political donors for those councilors. Look into it. Look into who donates to those people and why they would be saying this about this thing, and why chickens seems to be such an important thing for them to permit. We don't need a permitting process. We need a common sense enforcement mechanism, which just says if you have a chicken coop in your backyard and the chickens are running wild in the neighborhood, you should get fined. That's it. It's a simple, basic thing, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. And believe me, if someone gets fined a chicken, they'll stop having the chickens run wild. And by the way, most of the people know how to handle their chickens. They really, really do. They do. And they definitely know better than the city council does.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I don't understand the objection to it. Like, let people do their thing on their property.
Yeah. And the gardens too, by the way, coupled with this thing, let people grow their own food. The historic neighborhood thing. I live on Irving Street, which is considered a historic neighborhood, so none of the houses on Irving Street are allowed to have gardens in the front. But if you know that area, the Crown Hill neighborhood, right? All the backyards are just on this like compact dirt, so it's really difficult to do the gardens. The only place you could have a garden really is in the front, because that's the only place that's fertile ground, but they're not allowed. So you can't grow anything, tomatoes or anything like that, to offset the cost of food. And so the city is designed to force you to go to grocery stores or to drive far, which again affects the folks that have less.
And of course, grocery stores are dying by the second.
Well, that's because everybody's buying food online. And so they're all doing deliveries. So they're all going to these regional food hubs instead of actual grocery stores, right? So that's what the big strike argument with Stop and Shop is, with that fight with the Teamsters, is because Stop and Shop wants to close a ton of their stores and move to those regional operations similar to Walmart, Costco, and Sam's Club. And these are movements happening all over the country because people don't go to shop as much as they used to. And so what you end up having is more discount grocery stores like Price Chopper or what's the other one, Price Right or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
But they don't carry as much stuff because they get everything drop shipped, and so you never know those kind of things. You can't guarantee that you're going to have the things that people need. So again, people are forced to only buy unhealthy food. These are things that we should be able to solve right here in the city of Worcester, the size of the city, and allow people to grow their own food. Of course, the devil would want goats. I said this to him the other day in purpose. The devil would love to have him some goats.
Goats might be a little much, but chickens, I don't know. And I mean, there's a list. If you Google, you can find a list. The state has a list of each, what towns allow chickens and don't, and whatever. And many of them prohibit roosters because of their noise. Some don't, but those are usually pretty rural areas. But like for example, Boston, there's a permit in certain neighborhoods. I didn't look into where, but roosters aren't allowed. So that's pretty typical, it seems.
But dogs are allowed, right? You can have a dog that barks all night, all day, right?
I mean, if your dog barks all night and all day, you should probably pay attention to it.
Well, what I'm saying is that if a dog, there's no permitting. There's no noise ordinance for dogs, right? So why is there one for roosters? People are allowed to have dogs that bark all the time, but they can't have a rooster. That doesn't make any sense. Again, these are over regulations, unnecessary government intrusions into people's lives. This is not what we should have. At least for me, my opinion is it's unnecessary. Have an enforcement mechanism, make it simple, make it easy, and people will adapt.
Yeah, and there is many of the cities and towns that do permit it have a limit on how many you can have, and
obviously, if you can't handle 600 chickens, don't have 600 chickens. Have 5. You know what I mean?
That's probably more reasonable. Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else, sir?
No. So this is the most important part of the show, Tom.
Sarah, did we get to everything you wanted? If you didn't check out yet,
yeah, she's still there. I hope she's still there. She might have went to bed. But listen, since we talked about chickens, Tom, the favorite part of the show where I ask you about your favorite things, right? I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite type of eggs?
Like, as in how prepared?
Yeah, how do you prepare your eggs? What do you like?
I am an over easy. Over easy. I want it to bleed so I can stick bread in it and whatnot. But usually add a ton of hot sauce on top.
Ton of hot sauce. I'm a scrambled guy, always will be. Scrambled eggs till I die. So, and I want to raise my own chickens. I want 5. Fiona said 5. I want 5 chickens.
Dude, oh, she is still there. Is there anything else you wanted us to talk about related to chickens? You waited forever. I just want to check in and make sure we got those stuff.
Oh, there you go. Your girl checks in and with the over easy right there.
Yeah, Maria. These Irish kids don't know how to eat.
Scrambled, put stuff in it, scramble it up.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. But I mean, I don't know, over easy with the bread and I need that in my life. Not something I do a lot, but when I have eggs, it's usually how I am.
I might just go buy some roosters and just let them loose in the city.
Sarah's happy with the chicken talk. So then our mission is complete for the day. Do you have anything else, sir? That was a weak last question. That was one of your weaker last questions, by the way.
I don't know. I think it's in the chat. According to the chat, it's a popular one. Look at all the people showing up with the different kinds of eggs.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Is an omelet a type of egg though? Like an egg, like I
It's
guess
a preparation. It's a prepared thing.
I guess, right? Because you're yeah, I guess because if a scrambled egg is a method of preparation, you're just putting other stuff in it along, meh.
Oh man, a tasty chicken sandwich. Oh, I'm exhausted. Oh man. Woo.
So yeah,
thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, I mean we did 2 hours, but we missed a week. I guess we owed it to the people. Thanks to everyone who checked in, participated, watched. Thanks for not turning it off when I started screaming. Huh?
You buying them all eggs?
I'm not buying them all eggs.
I
write news for a living. That means I don't earn a living. That means I'm not buying nothing for nobody.
Hey, everybody come to Tuesday night. Come to the city council meeting. We'll see you there. I'll be there.
Yes.
Complaining.
We'll be there.
I'll be in line.
To talk to people not paying attention.
Oh yeah, if you want popcorn, text me, message me, do whatever. I'm doing popcorn deliveries all day tomorrow.
Oh God.
The small bags are 4 for $10 and the big bags are 3 for $10. Popcorn for everybody. Fiona got popcorn today, Tommy. I delivered popcorn to Fiona's open house today.
Nice. So we do this, except for last week. We do this every Sunday at 8:30, 8:35. We're often late. But we do it.
Late.
This is basically the format. We talk about stuff. Sometimes I yell. City Council on Tuesday. I thought there was something else this week, but maybe not. I'm sure there is. I'm just forgetting. So we will indeed try to screw it up less next time.
Yes.
Until then, thank you all for watching and participating. This week in Worcester.